All right, welcome to RetireJapan TV, where we talk about personal finance, investing, retirement, and life in Japan. And I'm always thrilled to invite guests onto the show, but today I'm particularly thrilled to welcome Philip Brasor. I've been a huge fan of his writing for a very long time, so it's wonderful to have the chance to talk to him today. Thank you for joining us, Philip. It's a huge honor for us to have you on.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so I think I first came across your writing probably through the blog. So Foreheads and Rabbit Hutches.
Right.
And then obviously through the Japan Times, you had a lot of articles on there.
Right.
And then more recently by following you on Twitter and seeing everything that you post there. And you're incredibly eclectic, I think. You have a really interesting combination of subject areas that you write about.
Yeah. Try to keep my mind open, I guess,
Yeah. But so the thing is, though, I haven't been able to find very much information about you online. So I'm presuming there's some kind of murky past involved here. So could you just tell us what your Japan origin story is, basically? How did you first come to Japan? So I came on the JET program for a year or two, as most people do, and that was 24 years ago. So what was your version of that story?
I got married to a Japanese woman, but I met her in the States, and we kind of corresponded back and forth for a while. And eventually, I came to Japan just to visit her, and I ended up staying like 9 months or something like that, And then we got married and went back to the States and lived in San Francisco for about 3 or 4 years. And she studied while she was there because she wasn't able to study in Japan because she never graduated from a correct high school, so to speak, And so she studied English, and then she studied anthropology and things like that. And then I was offered a job in Japan teaching English to salarymen. And so we moved to Japan, and then, I taught for about 4 years, I guess, in the late 80s.
Okay. So you came here kind of just towards the end of the bubble years.
Right, yeah. Well, it was during the bubble, yeah. And it was actually all through the bubble, because the bubble kind of started in 1985, and I came like the end of 1985. So. And I made tons of money. I mean, it was because I was working for a company that they essentially were hired by big companies who were sending people overseas. And so I would spend like 2 weeks out of a month with these people in intensive situations where they just spoke English all the time, and then to get them prepared to go over.
Right.
So I knew all the bubble stuff, and because all these guys were like, they were living the dream, so to speak, even though for a lot of them it was kind of a nightmare because they didn't want to go, But so I did that for 4 years, and I just got burnt out because it was like 2 months, 2 weeks out of every month, I was just like away from home, and that's all I was doing. I was just living, doing that kind of thing. And then my wife, Masako, my wife, she was also working pretty much full time, and she wanted to quit her job too. So we decided to become translators because there was a lot of money in it at the time, because it was still a bubble time, and there's still lots of companies that needed. This is before AI and all this kind of stuff,
Right. Yeah.
Machine translation, and so we got a lot of work. And that just kind of eventually morphed into, I just started writing and sending stuff out.
So you didn't have a writing background before you came to Japan?
No, not really. I mean, I wrote like short stories and things like that, but and I even published one short story, but in a magazine in Boston. But that was about it, And I was living in Japan, and it was kind of every day is kind of a learning experience, so to speak. So writing about it was just a way of sort of challenging myself to learn more. So the more I learned about Japan, could I write about it? Could I explain it to myself? Could I explain it to anybody else? That kind of thing. And
Wow. So you're largely self-taught, I guess.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
I never studied. I mean, I went to university, and I did I wrote things in university, but I never thought about actually making a profession out of it. So to speak.
Okay, so you don't have a degree in journalism. You've never
No,
worked kind
no
of for
doubt.
a
I mean,
newspaper or anything.
I don't really even consider myself a journalist so much. I just consider myself a critic more than anything else.
Okay. So you okay.
No, because
So
I don't go out and look for stories. I mean, that was when when I was doing the media column for the Japan Times. It was a media column. It was about the Japanese media, and my approach was to find out what stories were the Japanese media talking about that weren't necessarily being covered in the English language media, and so those kind of things were those. That's what interested me more than anything else. Yeah.
so I'm really interested because from my what I've seen of your work,
Uh-huh.
you seem to be writing about real estate, film and music,
Hmm.
politics, government policy, kind of welfare. There's a bit of a focus on welfare in
Yeah.
Japan.
Right.
Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. That's pretty accurate, I think. Yeah.
How did you end up with that mix of? Because it's quite a
Well,
varied list
I
of
mean,
topics.
you asked about research, and Masako, my wife, does my research for me, and a lot of these things are things she's interested in because she's has a certain, how to say, um, it's kind of like her way of getting back at things she's experienced in the past, and she wants these kind of topics, especially things about about things like welfare and real estate and money and how people earn money and how the government doles out money and things like that. And because she had a really pretty terrible childhood. She was like she's um, she was raised by a single mother, and her father was Korean. So and her father wasn't married to her mother, so it was a real kind of rough. She had a very
That's
rough
a real
childhood.
combination in the
Yeah, I know,
60s
right?
and
It's a
70s,
real,
isn't it?
yeah. No, in the late 50s, 60s, and so she's always been, she's always wanted to study these things herself, and she doesn't write. She just likes to do the research. But
She feeds you the juicy stories.
well, in a way, yeah. I mean, usually, often I come up with the idea, but she's the one who actually finds the details, which are really important, which I probably wouldn't be able to find on my own.
That's
And
really interesting because I do detect a tone of kind of outrage sometimes in your stories, like a kind of
yeah,
targeted
right.
outrage. Like some of the welfare ones are
Yeah,
just
well,
reading them.
I mean, she grew up really poor. I mean, she was like one of these. She and her mother would be like climbing out the window in the middle of the night, to escape the landlord, that kind of stuff. And hooking up with weird men just to get through the week. That kind of. This is like, again, this is the 50s and the 60s, so it's not particularly. Japan was growing, of course, really rapidly, but some people were at the bottom, and her mother didn't have an education. Her mother, she was like, I don't know, what is it? She was evacuated during the war, and so I think she never got past second grade, elementary schools. So there's that kind of thing that informs, I guess, a lot of the writing to a certain extent, So, and because I know Japan chiefly through her eyes, I would say.
Right. How's your Japanese then in terms of reading, writing?
I can, yeah, I'm not going to say I'm like as fluent as most of these people, but yeah, I have to use it. So, and in fact, I learned how to read it fairly well. That's one reason. That's kind of one of the reasons I got the movie job. early on because I was asked by Asahi Shimbun back in 1996, I think, to they wanted me to write about media stuff too for them, but I said, like, well, I'm already doing that for Japan Times, so I'm not, I don't think it would work, But I kind of suggested, I said, but I'll write about movies if you want, I like movies and I like to write about them.
That's
And
brilliant.
they already had two people, one person who did Japanese movies and another person who did American movies, or not English language movies. So they said, well, we already have two people. And I said, well, what about Asian movies or European movies for that matter? And they said, well, because I can read subtitles.
Ah, nice.
I can read the Japanese subtitles. So, and they said, okay. And so that's kind of how I got started writing about movies. So
That's fantastic. That's like make your own job, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was really lucky. So,
how have you find the career wave, as it were, over the years? So
it was once I started, it was actually pretty easy, but I didn't have that much trouble. Of course, in the beginning, of course, you don't get paid a lot as a writer,
right.
But I was able to find work fairly easily. I don't know why, and I found it in Japan. I sometimes get work from overseas, but as I said, I'm not really a journalist. Because I don't go out and find stories. I don't, sit people down to interview them and interrogate people, that kind of stuff. I mostly find what's already available in Japanese media and kind of use that as a jumping off point of.
Right, you're kind of curating things,
Right,
aren't you,
exactly.
for a new audience?
Yeah.
I would think that would be fairly popular overseas, especially with all the attention on Japan.
Well, yeah, sometimes I would get jobs that, like I wrote for the Guardian a couple times, 3 or 4 times, and that was usually about urban affairs and that kind of stuff. And I could do that there, but again, they want you to most media companies overseas. They do want you to go out and find stories, or at least get an original take on them. And I don't know if it's because I'm lazy or I'm just averse to calling people up on the phone and saying, hey, what about this? There are people who are much better than me at that kind of thing, and more power to them, I think.
Oh, I think I can understand. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what's your kind of work week look like?
Now it's not much. Now it's not really much anymore because it's I lost most of my. Japan Times kind of. Again, for 15, almost 20 years, I was most of my work was with the Japan Times because I had the media column, which was weekly, and then for a while I had the housing column for a while, for about six or 7 years, and then I had a money column. I started out as a blog for the Japan Times, and then it turned into a monthly column too. So for them, and then actually in the 90s, I was also their music critic for a while. So it was quite hectic all that time, And then I was also editing a monthly magazine, kind of just an entertainment magazine that was kind of given away in record stores and things like that in Tokyo. So I was doing that. So yeah, it was pretty busy. It used to be, up until just about 2 or 3 years ago, I just worked 365 days a year. I just would be working every day, and so, but I liked it. I really liked being busy, and now I'm not so busy, and it's kind of it's not as interesting.
I know a lot of people were disappointed when the Japan Times kind of reorganized and got rid of a lot of its regular writers. So
yeah,
I certainly.
Well, that's I guess progress to a certain extent. Yeah. But yeah.
So what made you start your blog? Because I think a lot of people are going to know you mainly through the Cat Foreheads blog, which I'm a huge fan of. Been reading it for a long time.
Yeah. Cat Foreheads, we started in, it was 2009 we started. Um, yeah, it was, came, a lot of the stuff we were writing uh, was often centered on housing, because it's just a basic thing. Yeah. And I think it's really, I think we never really saw a lot of writing, at least in English, about the Japanese housing situation, which is a little bit, um, and especially the whole idea of asset value, which is kind of a leitmotif in what we do, because we never saw anybody talking about that. The fact that you buy a house or you buy a property, and 30 years later, it's probably not worth anything. At least
It's
a
a bit of
house.
a it's a bit of a thing to get your head around, isn't it? Coming
Right, right.
from
Yeah, it's
elsewhere.
I mean, you know, the land is still worth something, of course, but the house, but the structure itself usually loses value. And we'd known about this for years and years and years, and we just always wondered, why doesn't anybody talk about this? And I suppose I was looking at it from an American standpoint, because in America, like, that's it. You buy a house, and that's going to be your nest egg in a way. You hold on to your house, and you sell it when you retire, and then you take the money and go to Florida, whatever. One of those cliches. It's like, that's just all. Everybody I knew did that. And so I come to Japan and like see all these people with these houses, especially houses they bought during the bubble period. Those really, they spent a lot of money. They there was even like, I mean, not just even in Tokyo, just outside of Tokyo, they're paying like 60 million yen for a house in like late 80s. Plus, then the mortgage is like 6.6, more than 6% at the time.
Wow.
35 years. How much money are they going to spend for the rest of their life to own that house? And then by the time they pay it off and they get to the retirement, it's probably the land is still worth something. So it's not, it hasn't increased in value at all. It's gone down in value. So
Yeah.
so
No, we bought our mansion. So our mansion was built at the end of the bubble years.
right.
So it's that bubble construction. I think we bought it for a third of the price it went
Of
for
course, yeah,
originally.
yeah. So you're okay because you bought something which was ridiculously expensive at the time. But I think you told me several weeks ago that you had just had renovation work done, right?
We've done a little bit. So the mansion itself is
Yeah.
doing the Daikibo kind of
Right.
the maintenance, the kind of
Right.
20-year maintenance or whatever.
Right.
And yeah, it's just finishing. Thank
Oh,
God.
just
It's been 9 months of constant.
right. Yeah. That kind of thing is rather important. So
No, it was quite reassuring that they did it and they
yeah,
did it
right. Yeah,
properly. And they didn't ask us for money because it
that's
seems
good.
they've been
Yeah,
running the funds properly.
a lot of them will ask you for money because they don't collect enough to put into the fund. From the beginning.
You've done a few articles about this recently,
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
you? Kind
Right.
of.
Yeah. But anyway, we, most of this came from a experience we had in the early '90s when we were living in Omiya in Saitama Prefecture, and I just started kind of writing, and I was getting a lot of work, and we've visited some friends of ours in Nagano Prefecture, and they were saying, "Oh, you should move up here," because the internet was suddenly we had the internet, so I didn't have to live anywhere. I could live anywhere I wanted to. I could work from home and just. And they suggested this. There was this town nearby where they lived that was trying to get people to move back. They had lost a lot of population, as many small communities like that had done. And so they had this development on the top of this hill, which was it was very nice. And they were selling lots on this thing for below market rate, just in order to get people. And so it was very popular. But they were selling them by like a lottery, like a raffle. You put
Okay.
your name in and things like that. And so we went just to kind of humor our friends, more than anything. But there was one lot which we really liked. It was on the edge of this hill and overlooking this valley, this beautiful view, And so we just said, oh, well, why not? Just can't lose anything, So we entered it and we won. But what we won is we won the right to buy the lot, And so, one thing leads to another, and you go, wow, we're really excited about it, But we weren't really ready, because I think there was a lot of conditions, and the conditions added up to being kind of intimidating. First of all, you had to use a local bank, and you had to use local builders, and we had kind of planned like we were going to build our own house and design it and all this kind of stuff, and they kind of looked askance at that because they had all these models they wanted us to buy.
Oh, okay. So it was a themed development.
And it just turned out to be a racket. There were developers and builders and banks, and they were all in on it together. And and eventually we just kept putting it off, and this 3-year period, you had to build within 3 years, start building within 3 years. And eventually we gave up, and then it was a really kind of a nightmare because there was all these fees we had to pay, and canceling the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. We ended up paying like $1 million in just
to get out of it.
So it was kind of a very expensive lesson in Japanese real estate. And so because of that, we just said, we were really naive and stupid. So I think from then we just wanted to learn more and more and more. If we ever did it again, even though we were kind of like, it's okay, renting's fine, And
so that's where it kind of grew out of this unpleasant experience you had.
Yeah, so just became more interested in that.
Yeah, my father-in-law still has a plot in this forest in Iwate. It's some onsen plot thing that was to build a besso on.
Yeah.
And he's had it since the 90s. Yeah. And we can't give it away. We're trying to get rid of it because he has to pay property tax, right? But no one wants it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And that's going to be true in a lot of places, in the future, Not just in besso areas, but in probably a lot of
the villages and the towns as well, eh?
Yeah, all these. I mean, during the bubble period, like you could build. I mean, people couldn't afford to live in Tokyo, even though they're working in Tokyo. But because Japan has this really unique system where your employer pays your transportation, you can live anywhere. If you want to put up with a 2-hour commute, But so that's why they kept getting farther and farther and farther out of Tokyo. You get these, and the trains are only we'll build lots of trains because we can make tons of money, And the trains usually own the real estate anyway. Along
right.
So they were so happy, So this is all
even Sendai would be commutable to Tokyo, I think.
Well,
Sendai's
a bit out, but for example, when they were building the Nagano Shinkansen in the late 90s, mainly for the Olympics, 1998, when they were building it, they were advertising developments along the Shinkansen, like in Gunma Prefecture, and they said 1 hour to Tokyo if you take the Shinkansen. Of course, if you take a regular train, it'll take you 2.5 hours to get to Tokyo. One way, more than 2.5, probably 3 hours, to get to central Tokyo. But they were advertising these in the newspaper, and people were buying them because they knew that their company would pay for the commute. I assume some companies wouldn't pay for the commute, but I think
big ones would, wouldn't they?
The big ones would, yeah. And that's unbelievable. Because that's what the Shinkansen is anyway. Shinkansen is pretty much just the network to Tokyo, no matter where it goes, because all roads lead to Tokyo. It doesn't. And when they built the Shinkansen, most of these local lines, they supplanted them. They were put out of business. So,
So
but
you've
that's
ended up living in Chiba, I believe.
right.
So are you still living there?
Yeah, still here.
Still happy with? Is that where you are now?
Yep, that's where I am now.
Fantastic. So I enjoyed reading the whole process in your blog, and we've had
Yeah,
a question from Twitter
yeah.
asking, are you and your partner happy with the house you built, and is there anything you would have done differently now that you've lived in it for a while?
Yes, there's lots of things, and we're always doing them. Because we didn't know we when we built the house. The idea was that we were getting older, and we're freelancers. We don't have a guaranteed income, so we needed a place to live that we wouldn't not going to be kicked out of someday. At least until we get too old to not live anywhere.
That's a worry, isn't it? Because like
Yeah,
the
it is.
older you get, the less likely
Right,
you are to
right,
find accommodation.
right. And after the earthquake, Moscow didn't want to live in Tokyo anymore. We were living on the 24th floor of a building, and it was pretty rough.
Oh,
And so we moved out, and we decided to make find a place to live. And we did everything. We tried buying a used place and fixing it up, or buying a new place, or that's already through a developer. But in the end, we kind of went the way of just buying land and then hiring a housing company just to build something to our specifications. But what we built was very, 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 very simple. It's a very small house. It's 2 floors. It's only 90 square meters altogether, and so it's always a work in progress. It's always been a work in progress, and it still is. And yeah, there's a lot of things we did, which again, what our main criterion in the beginning was that we wanted to be able to build it with the money we had. We didn't want to take out a loan. Again, I told you, Moscow had a really rough childhood, and she's like deathly afraid of being in debt. Really, I mean, even just a regular mortgage, that kind of stuff. She just, in the end, we did have to end up taking out a small mortgage, but only for 7 million yen. Just kind of mostly to take care of like odds and ends and things like that. But since then, we've been we keep adding it. Right now, we're having the roof redone, and we're having some more. We might put in some extra, they go uchimado inside windows.
yeah.
Because first floor is still a little cold in the winter. It's not bad, but we figured if we put uchimado on some of the windows, that would take.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like really fantastic noise reduction,
Right.
temperature, everything.
Yeah. But we live in the woods, so it's like we don't have to worry about neighbors looking at our windows and things like that, and it's pretty quiet where we are. So
You don't have traffic on outside the
there's no
window.
traffic at all, because
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So
My experience of building in Japan is that everything costs 50% more than they tell you it's going to.
yeah, of
So
course,
if you manage to stick to your budget, that's incredible.
we were kind of lucky because we kind of told this housing company, which is kind of an unusual company. They're based in Ibaraki Prefecture, and they build very simple houses, and they have only like 10 models, and they make money by what you do is you purchase one model and then you add to it, and then they make money by doing the design and then adding the stuff to it. That's how they make money. So they only do what you tell them to do, and so
Okay.
and so they were really good about that. Even though I kind of wish they had told us a little bit more, because some of the stuff we did, that we said we should have done this, and I guess maybe they were being too polite or something.
So what are your kind of top 3 things you would have done differently with the house?
Probably. I think We would have met. We have what they call a unit bathroom because the according to the housing company, because they have a deal. They have a deal with a utility, not a utility, with a fixtures company and things like that. And so, of course, you buy everything through them, and they just sold us a unit bath, because our design is opposite of the usual house. So we have all the kitchen and the living room and dining room and the bath area is all on the second floor.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, because we have it's all windows. Because nobody lives around us, so we can look out. We got big windows, and it's all one big room in a way. So on the second floor. So and then the bedroom's on the first floor, and my office is on the first floor too. And then there's a special room for the cats. So, but yeah, if I had to do it over, I would have maybe put in a custom bathroom.
Okay.
The unit bath is just not satisfactory, So it's a little bit cheap.
They're a bit bland, aren't they?
Yeah, you can, right? Yeah, and not so much they're bland. They're also difficult to keep clean too, in a way, because of the mold, and you have to regrout them all the time, because it keeps coming out. It's really cheap around the edges, so you have to do that all the time.
We've had a few people asking. I think you got a special kind of heater that kind of stores heat or something.
Right, it's called.
We've had people asking about that on Retired Japan. How are you finding that?
It works really well because it's. The thing is, it's tricky because you have to have a kind of predictive talent, because what happens is it's designed for the cheaper rates at night, because usually because of course all utilities, they have to run constantly. You can't shut a power plant down. It has to always be running. So of course in the nighttime when nobody's using it, you're wasting all this electricity. So the utilities would lower the price at night. So what happens is with the storage heater, it only turns on at night. It means that it absorbs. What it is just a big box filled with ceramic bricks. And what it does is at night, between, I think it's like 12 midnight and 7 in the morning, it heats the bricks, and then it turns off. And then the rest of the day, the bricks just radiate.
Ah, okay.
But you can't control it, see? Because it radiates. You can't just say, stop.
Stop radiating.
Yeah, stop radiating. You can't do that, So it just keeps doing that. And then, so you have to be able to predict the night before, because you can set the amount of electricity that's going to be put in. So if tomorrow's going to be really cold, then you might want to put it on the highest setting. If it's not going to be so cold, then you might put it on a lower setting. So you have to get used to it,
Right.
But it works really well because the house is always nice in a way, Except,
and it's not too expensive with the higher electricity prices.
It is now, because they stopped it went up a year ago, and our bill went up to the roof.
Do you have a backup heating system, like an air conditioner or something?
No, we don't have. I hate air conditioners.
Oh, interesting.
We live in the woods, so in the summer it's not too bad. If you open the windows, it's relatively cool. It's usually about 2 or 3 degrees cooler here than it is closer in the town, so to speak.
Right, you're outside the heat island.
Right, and we're in the woods so there's lots of vegetation, so it keeps it.
Interesting. Okay, we've got a couple of supplementary real estate questions. I'm just going to throw up if that's okay. So, do you have any advice for people looking to buy property in Japan without a mortgage?
Yeah, I mean, we did that. That's just because we saved money more than anything else. So we had
It's probably easier, isn't it, if you've got cash?
If you got cash, yeah. And we had some stuff in the investments in the States too. weren't too difficult to liquidate. So it wasn't so bad. The thing is, I think you have to look around more than anything. There are, as everybody knows, there's now lots of cheap properties, and they're very easy to have. They're very easy to obtain. The main thing you have to think about is how much work you're going to have to put into it. That was our problem because we looked at a lot of places and they're so cheap. You could buy a place for like 3 million yen. Fairly nice place in a fairly nice area. But when you look at the house itself, the insulation sucks. The insulation's already bad. There's settling, maybe, especially because of earthquakes. If it was built on what they call a morido. Morido is like kind of
reclaimed land.
Right. Yeah, kind of like reclaimed land. Yeah. It's a common thing because in Japan, Japan's very hilly, very mountainous. There's not a whole lot of level land. It's 70% mountainous. So there's not a lot of land which is immediately available for development. So what they do is they usually have to like take land which is hilly and redevelop it. And usually what they do is they chop off a hill, take the dirt and put it in the valley. And so you have this kind of thing, but you don't know if the valley itself is stable or not. That's why when we were looking for houses, we always looked at topographical maps. You go to the city hall and look at them and see what kind.
That's really important, isn't it? When you're considering a
because whenever there's an earthquake, Sendai was a big place. During 2011, a lot of houses were doing this kind of thing. They just
my friend's place it cracked, and I think the insurance wouldn't cover it because it wasn't damaged enough. So he had to pay to get it.
Earthquake insurance is weird. Earthquake insurance in Japan is really strange because it's like it only covers like 20 up to 25% of the damage or something like that. It's some kind of weird rule they have, but I don't know if that's the way it is. But without a mortgage, you can do it, but you have to be a little more careful. Don't, because there's plenty of properties that you could buy cheap, but you're going to need. You have to figure out how much more money you're going to need to actually get it into the shape you want. And that's
it's not just buying it; it's renovating it and doing all the rest.
And we just got tired of thinking in that way because it was always like, oh, how much do you need? And we'd ask people how much, and always get different answers. So eventually, we found a cheap piece of land which was in a nice location, and it was a stable place. It was on top of a hill, so it's stable. It's kind of bedrock. There's no, and so. And then we just built the house, but we just kept it. We had a ceiling. We're only going to pay this much, so we just looked around until we found a builder who could do that.
Okay. Okay, we got another question, but I think you've just answered it, so hopefully that's okay.
Right. That's pretty much why we did it. I mean, if I was more of a resourceful person, a handyman type person, I think that I would probably get into that kind of thing of fixing up a house, but I have no such talents, and
me too,
nor the inclination. So
I see all these. There's a lot of YouTube channels now. Look at my IKEA house that I rebuilt with my own hands, and it looks great, but I wouldn't want to do it myself. So getting back into non-real estate topics, super quick. So I've been noticing. I had a look at your Instagram today. I was trying to find information about you, and I couldn't find anything. But I found your Instagram account, and it's all like travel and award ceremonies and concerts.
Go someplace, I just get bored. I'll take a picture and put it on Instagram. So that's the only.
It looks really glamorous, but this isn't your day to day, is it?
No, it's not. Definitely not my day to day. It's like my twice a year or something.
Okay, so you said you wrote about money quite a bit, which is exactly what we deal with here at Retire Japan most of the time. So what what are you doing, if you don't mind me asking, with your kind of money investments? So what's your kind of outlook? What do you?
Well, I mean, we saved our money a lot, but we saved our money in the United States. We did for a while we had an annuity here for a while, but that went bust in the 90s during the late 90s when they had all those problems with the banks and the insurance companies. A lot of our annuity we just kind of lost it, just kind of disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, and we were already keeping money in the States in mutual funds and that kind of stuff, And so from then on, we just decided any extra money we had, we just put it in America and in those kind of funds, And I had a broker and everything, so.
Okay, so
And
basically, as an American, you're very restricted here in Japan, aren't you?
yeah, right, yeah, and well, of course, I have to pay taxes on it. That's the whole problem. And I used to do my own taxes, but I wasn't. I didn't always understand what I was doing, especially when it comes to things like capital gains and that kind of thing. Long-term capital gains versus short-term capital gains. There's all these forms you have to fill out, and I guess I was filling that wrong because I always get a note from the IRS saying, like, oh, you made a mistake here, and you actually owe us another $800 or something like that, plus a little penalty. And I said, oh, okay, so I paid it. Then 2 years later, oh, you made another little mistake, and it was maybe you were off by about like $1,500. So okay, I send a check. Then I think it was 2011 or 2012. And I received another letter from the IRS saying, "Oh yeah, you made a mistake this time. You owe us $18,000."
Seriously?
$18,000. I didn't even make $18,000. Yeah, and it was kind of a mistake. Yeah, it was their. I mean, they were. I don't know if it was their mistake or not, but anyway, I went to an accountant, a friend of mine, and she said, "Yeah, they're just pulling your leg."
Oh, okay. So you didn't end up having to pay $18,000.
Yeah, right. And so she helped me straighten it out, and there was no problem. But also I hired her after that, and so she does my taxes, which is really stupid because I spend more money on her than I do on the taxes itself. I hardly pay any taxes there because I don't make that much money. Even we now have index funds in the States, and they're low risk, so we don't really make. They're steady, they're stable. We make a nice living off of it, so it's fine. But we don't make a lot of money. So
okay, presumably your wife is your wife a citizen as well of the US, or
no, she's a Japanese.
so presumably she could be using NISA and stuff here, but you haven't chosen to do that.
She could, and she studied it, and there might come a time when we might, because especially we're both getting older. I'm 68 and she's 67, so like it's we have to think about bringing some of that money over, and for the end time, so to speak. I don't know what you want to call it.
For the last 3 decades, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's a big problem we're having right now. I don't want to say problem, but it's a big concern we have right now is how we're going to do this. We don't have children. I don't know if this house is going to be worth anything. It's a nice house and we like it, but again, as we said, it might not. It was built to our specifications, to our lifestyle, to our situation. I'm not too sure if anybody else would want it. There's no guarantee, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to live my life in that way where I'm going to think, my future is this. I have to plan. I have to design something to satisfy that. I'm not going to do that. Try to. It's a nice house. I like it the way it is.
I quite like the Japanese approach to real estate, where it's kind of
Yeah.
almost a consumer good, but it's affordable.
In a way, I think it's right.
Everyone can get a
I don't
house.
want to make I don't want to make it sound like I'm against the whole idea that that because the whole asset thing in Europe and America is really overblown. Like young people today, they can't buy a house, because they can't buy a used house because the properties are just too expensive.
I don't think I could if I went back to
Yeah,
the UK now.
I couldn't either. It's impossible. At least in Japan, young people can buy a house. The main problem in Japan is that they don't think about everything has to be new. And they just build so much, and it's build and build and build, and then that stuff just becomes garbage. So there has to be a middle ground, I think, in some state. And even if you're not going to make money off your property in the long run, be nice at least if you could kind of get back what you put into it. That would at least be a nice thing. At least it would be an asset, at least in that way. It's not going to necessarily be an added value asset, but an asset.
Yeah, definitely. Ooh, bit of a heavy question for you. Where do you see Japan changing kind of 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line? I presume you're planning to stay, so
Yeah, I plan to stay. I have nowhere to go. I don't know. I'm not really such a fatalist about this shoshika, the low birth rate. I tend to think that you can deal with it. If you're not, again, everybody has, they're kind of obsessed with growth, and until you kind of get over that idea, which has probably seen its day, especially on a planet which is dying because of growth, you have to change the whole model, I think. And I think Japan can do that. And I think, in a way, I think this shoshika thing, the shrinking of the population is actually, I think, kind of an opportunity. I don't have any advice. I don't say what they should do, but I think people have ideas, and I think they can actually do a good job of it in Japan because they're pretty Japanese people, and the country in general is really good at addressing problems. They don't always solve them in a satisfactory way because you have all these vested interests, which are always at odds with each other. Often they're at odds with the public good too. Which is one of the things we often write about. But that's, I think, sorry, but you have to get rid of these guys, these old guys who are there because they're just living in the past. They are living in the past. I hate to say that. It's such a trite thing to say, these old guys living in the past. But it's really true in Japan because, we're writing an article now about, for the FCCJ, about this system about besse, about the separate names for married couples,
Oh, yeah.
And we've written about it many times before, But one of the things, it's probably going to change. Maybe even within this year, they might actually address it and actually change the law to allow married couples the option of having separate names. But we also talked about things like illegitimacy, which is it's still codified in the family register and the koseki and other things, which is, who does that in the world? Who said, oh, this child
It's a permanent record, right?
So whenever you take your documents to get a job, they go, oh, you're a child born out of wedlock. And how interesting, or something like that. What's the point? There's no reason to do that. It had a reason maybe 100 years ago when the idea of the koseki was to show who is the head of a household and who are the heirs after that. So an illegitimate child at that time got half the inheritance of a legitimate child. So you needed that designation.
Paperwork, right? Yeah.
Yeah, paperwork. Yeah, But now it's like stupid. Why do you have such a thing? And it's just because these old guys just think it's necessary because they think the integrity of the family and all this bullshit. The integrity of the family, the divorce rate in Japan is just as high as it is anywhere else in the world. Even with this, even though everybody has the same name in the family, it doesn't make any difference. It's just this. And until you get this mindset to free up and think about what's beyond the idea of a growth economy,
So we're just managing a transition then.
Exactly. So I think, yeah. I mean, it's do or die if you want to get down to it that way.
All right, we've got a really nice question in the chat that might be good to consider. So the pros and cons of retiring in Japan. And what are you looking forward to about retirement? What are you afraid of during retirement? That's quite heavy, actually.
Well, I am. I mean, again, as I said before, we don't have kids, so that's, I think, that makes things a little complicated in terms of what are you going to do with your asset, what are you going to do with your property, what are you going to do with all the things. Again, this is not my retirement. It's talking about beyond retirement when I'm dead. But it is something that we talk about a lot. I'm kind of semi-retired anyway. Again, I lost a lot of my work. I'm a writer, so I guess I never retire. As long as I write, I will write. Even if I'm not making any money off of it. So I still make some money off it. So that's good. But I'm getting Social Security now from the United States, which is really good because the dollar is so high.
Yeah. Oh, have you started taking Nenkin, or have you deferred it?
I didn't. The weird thing, I don't get Nenkin from Japan. I never paid into it because when I first came and I worked I was an English teacher. At that time, it was an option. I don't know why, but I was asked by my company, so do you want to sign up for Nenkin? And I said, do I have to? They said, no, I don't want to. I said, okay, no, I won't. So I didn't. And the thing is, Moscow got out of it too because she was married to me for some years. It was a kind of strange loophole. I don't think you can do it anymore.
Yeah, they're getting a lot stricter now, I think.
Right, yeah. But they've never come to me and said, you have to pay, and I never
well,
paid
once you're after 60, that's it, isn't
right,
it?
Yeah.
It's voluntary after that.
Yeah. So I guess, and I think there's actually some arrangement between Japan and the United States about Nenkin. You can either get Social Security or Nenkin or something. So and so I get Social Security from America. And I had to actually file it with the Japanese government. I had to tell the Japanese government.
Ah, right, yeah.
Because they have to, I think it has to go through them in some way. So, but it's fine. It worked out really good. As long as Trump doesn't get rid of Social Security. Who knows?
Hopefully, yeah, that was just a throwaway comment.
Yeah, but retire, I don't know. I've never retired anywhere, so retiring in Japan is the only thing I know. So I can't comment on if I like it any better than anything else. Personally, I like working. As long as I'm writing anyway, I just really enjoy writing, and I just enjoy doing that kind of stuff. If I couldn't do it, I'd probably be pretty bored. Because
I feel the same. So I don't imagine not doing RetireJapan ever.
Right. Yeah.
It's a privilege to get to
RetireJapan about retirement. So as long as people are going to retire, you have work to do.
I'll just add a D at some point.
Right.
Into retired Japan.
Right.
But okay, so anything you're afraid of the process, like?
Yeah, I'm afraid of getting old and infirm, so to speak. I don't know. The stuff we've written about, it's not, Japan doesn't really do it well, I think, in terms of assisted living and that kind of stuff and care. If you have a lot of money, it's no problem. But you have to have a lot of money, and usually you have to sign up all your money over to these facilities.
It's kind of all or nothing, isn't it?
Right,
I
exactly,
mean, you've got kind of Kaigo Hoken stuff.
Right, yeah, but Kaigo is also, and they keep they keep pushing the the goal lines farther and farther. It used to be like, because you have 5 levels of and the amount of care you get depends on your assessment for. But they keep changing those every year to make it more difficult to get. So it's not a perfect system. And so yeah, I am afraid of that. When getting to that point, if I don't have a lot of money and I can't, because the places that are available for people who don't have a lot of money are pretty terrible. I know, because my mother-in-law. So that's.
Yeah, I spent 6 weeks in a hospital as a kind of dry run for what institutionalization might be like, and it was okay, but very different from years, I think.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to say. But I don't think I could move back to the States. I just don't know. If just for that reason. But I suppose it's possible. I don't know. But I have to start thinking about that soon.
Yeah. I think Japan's a pretty good place to retire.
No, I'm not. Yeah, it's not. But I've heard horror stories, and it's kind of difficult to not think about them.
I think being aware of the system is a lot of the way to avoiding the horror stories.
Right. Yeah.
If you're not aware, then that's where you're going to sleepwalk into it, kind of thing.
Right.
So. And most, even though there's a lot of, like, my in-laws, for example, have dementia, and that's tough. They're still at home, which is good, but I think most people avoid that. There's a lot of healthy seniors wandering around the place here. Much more than in the UK. So.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good. Yeah, a lot of America, where everybody's quite round. So.
Definitely. So, last question from me, which is, do you have any kind of Japanese language sources that you recommend, kind of newspapers or websites or TV programs or that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, we get a lot of, we get our information pretty much everywhere, but again, Masako likes to do fairly deep dives, and she doesn't, and if she's going to read something in the mainstream press, she's going to try to find some kind of alternative thing in the more marginal press. So and there's a lot of stuff on the internet which is quite good. There's one online magazine called Tansa, which is run by Waseda. Used to be called Waseda. It's like a group of independent journalists at Waseda University, and they do in-depth reporting in Japanese. Also, a web program called Democracy Times. They usually do very, very in-depth stories about topical news or breaking news. But what they do is they get in freelance journalists who talk at length about them and explain things and background and things like that, which you don't get in the newspapers, things like that. And or video news, which is another show which I forget the guy's name, the journalist who runs it, but he's quite good. He was a journalist in the States for a long time, but he's Japanese. You have to kind of look on the edges, for these kind of things. But, at least those 3 sources are quite good, I think.
Have you ever considered having a newsletter or a kind of collection of links or something that you could put out for people?
We did. We were supposed to do it actually at one point for Japan Times. I was going to do it with one of the editors at Japan Times. Couldn't really get it together. At least couldn't get the money together for it, I guess. Yeah, it's. I mean, if you read the blog, I mean, there's a lot. There's always links on the blog to the sources we have, So if you go to those sources, you'll probably find that a lot of them are similar from one story to the next. We tend to use a lot of the same sources, so you can find those things in a way. That's a good idea. If I ever get my homepage together rather than just
So where can we find you then? Where can we find your work at the moment? So you've got the Cat Foreheads blog
and my personal blog.
You've got your philipbrasor.com.
Right. And the FCCJ. It's called Number One Shimbun. It's a foreign correspondence club in Japan. So
yeah,
we do a monthly column for them. And except for that, mostly I'm just writing for like industry magazines and things like that. Just writing, not really just like aggregating that kind of stuff.
Right. And then you've got your Twitter account. It's fairly active.
Yeah.
So that's
and we have a book, but we don't know when it's. I haven't found a publisher yet.
Oh, what's the book about?
It's about Japanese housing.
English language?
Yeah. But I mean, if we have to find a publisher first, that's the whole point. That's the problem,
So you've written the book and you need the publisher now.
Right.
So if anyone wants to publish the book, contact Philip.
Okay, yeah, please. Yeah. Or if you know of somebody.
Definitely.
I'm working on it anyway. So working on finding. So see how that works.
Yeah, I'm sure that there'd be a lot of people interested in reading that. So I know the blog's incredibly popular. So wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on, Philip. Actually, I do have a kind of follow-up question based on that. So given that there is almost nothing on you that I could find online, why did you choose to come and join us here on RetireJapan TV today?
Because you asked.
Okay. Because I've asked you before and I've never gotten an answer.
Sorry, maybe I just tossed it off, and this time sorry, I don't remember being asked to be in this.
I've been trying to get hold of you for years now, I think.
Oh, really?
And it's been really wonderful talking to you today. So thank you very much.
Sure. Pleasure. Nice.
And everyone go and check out the blogs, follow Philip on Twitter, and let's hope that book comes out soon.
I hope so too. Okay. Anyway, thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks a lot, Philip.
Okay, bye.
All right. So everyone on the chat, that was wonderful. I really enjoyed that conversation. We will have the recording up tomorrow if you came in halfway or if you missed it entirely. You may have noticed that Daniel's not here. So Daniel is the heart and soul of RetireJapan TV, and he couldn't make it today at short notice. So he's very sorry. I'm gutted that he's not here. So we're actually going to end now after the interview. We're not going to do our normal show. So we'll be back next month with twice as much content and so on. So thanks for joining us. I think this is the largest audience we've ever had live, and it's been great. So thanks a lot, everyone. See you next month.